Today, we're talking about your relationship with other people, you and everyone else. How many people can relate to this? Because why? You know people, right? You're related to people. You're friends with people. You may date people, hopefully, eventually. But you're around people all the time, right? It's who we are. We're social beings. We desire relationships. We desire friendships. We desire the company of other people. Why? Because nobody was created to be alone. Whether that means with a friend or whether that means in a marriage eventually, but no one was designed to be alone. When you are alone for a really long time, you turn into a really weird person. Has anybody ever seen that movie about the grizzly man? No. I'm not going to tell you to go see it necessarily, but you know what I'm talking about? No, oh, you said no. Well, there's this guy who thinks that he can communicate with bears. Not just any bear, grizzly bears. And he believes that he can live with these grizzly bears like in caves and like out in the wilderness with them. And so there's this documentary about this man that he lived with grizzly bears, and he named them all, and he would pet them, and he would steal fish from them, and they were getting kind of angry. And then one day, grizzly man disappeared, and no one had heard from him in a while. And this videotape was found, kind of like a Blair Witch kind of project situation. This videotape was found, and they watched it, and the video was this man living with the grizzlies, and at the very end of it was him getting eaten alive by a grizzly bear. Because when you live by yourself, in particular with grizzly bears, you become a psychopath and you end up just getting eaten by a grizzly bear. You become crazy. Why? Because humanity wasn't meant to live out in the wilderness with grizzlies. We were meant to be in communion and fellowship and worship with each other to God. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I want to check out this first verse as we start getting into the discussion between our relationship with ourselves and with other people. I want you to check us out. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, it says this, and this is God speaking. It is not good for the man to be alone, so I will create a companion for him, a perfectly suited partner. And obviously this is in regards to Adam and Eve, but what's happening is this, is God commissioned Adam to do work. And he said, Adam, I want you to go into the world, and I want you to be in the garden, and I want you to name all of these animals and all of these plants, and you can kind of do whatever you want. Minus eating from this one tree. And he's like, okay, cool. So an unknown amount of time goes by, and you can kind of imagine Adam's going a little crazy. He's living with grizzly bears. He doesn't want to get eaten by a grizzly bear. And so God realizes, like, wow, Adam is kind of depressed. Adam isn't really loving this life that I gave him. Wow, probably because he's alone. And life isn't meant as humans to be alone. So the Bible says that God creates woman, Eve, and it was a perfectly suited match for Adam. In other words, that there's individuals in our lives that complement who we are. I'm going to give you guys an example between my wife and I. I like to think that I'm my wife's soulmate, but I'm not. And I always am aware of the fact that I am not my wife's soulmate when I'm hanging out with my wife and her best friend. My wife's best friend's name's Julie. Julie is my wife's soulmate. And Julie's married to a guy named Joe. And when me and Joe and Julie and Ashley are together, me and Joe always goof off and always make fun of them because me and Joe are the outsiders while the two soulmates get to finally hang out again. You see, just because you have a soulmate doesn't mean it's going to be of the opposite sex. My wife found her soulmate in Julie. They've been best friends since 5th grade, and they've only lived next to each other for only 2 of those years. The multitude of their relationship has been spread about literally from Maryland to California. Yet they're still best friends. They talk all the time, and it's annoying. Like when they get together, they have this like special little voice they talk to each other in. And I'm always kind of like, I don't know what they're talking about. There's all these inside jokes. And I'm the third wheel, and it's not very fun. But luckily, Julie likes me, and so I was allowed to marry Ashley. But God has created in you a desire to want to be with people. The problem is that you and I often find relationships in places that aren't necessarily healthy for us. This whole sermon that we're going to be talking about today is how to have a healthy relationship between you and the people of this world. Christian or non. Now, once again, I challenge you, if you have no non-Christian friends, get at least one. And if you have no Christian friends, get a whole bunch of them. Because we need a balance in our lives of people that we can minister to and people who can minister back to us. And that's really what we're talking about today, is how can God use you to bring His love and relationship to other people? And also, how can God use those other people in your life to bring Him into your life? So I want you guys to check out this next verse. It says this in Proverbs 27:17, in the same way that iron sharpens iron, a person sharpens the character of his friend. You see, whenever I make decisions on my own, I end up doing stupid things. Or when I hang out with stupid people, I end up making stupid choices. I wrote a book a couple years ago, and finally got it published in June, which is awesome. And so been doing that whole thing. But there's a lot of stories about my life in that book, and it's a lot of stupid stuff I did because I hung out with stupid people. One of those stupid stories is this. I remember one time I was driving down the freeway, and I had the bright idea of putting someone on the hood of my car and driving with them on my car to see how fast I could go. Disclaimer, do not try this at home, kids. Okay? And so I had a couple guys in my car with me. We were all acting stupid. We were all being really dumb. And I pulled over off the side of the road, got on the back road, put a guy on the hood of my car, and started proceeding to go as fast as I could down this road, topping out about 115 or so with a man on the hood of my car. Well, a stop sign was coming up, and it was T-boning at the end of the street, so I had to what? Eventually stop. And so I began to just slam on my brakes. Well, what I forgot was that there was a guy on the hood of my car. Now, see, this is what happens when you're hanging out with stupid people. You do what? Stupid things. Luckily for me, he had a good grip. He slipped, caught onto no, but like, you know where the hood of the car meets the windshield? Right where your hands, he kind of slipped off over my windshield and then grabbed onto it. And so we're all freaking out. We're all pretty scared. The guy lived. He hops off. He's super stoked, because he thinks he's like a acrobat or like a stuntman now. But I promised myself I would never, ever do that again. And I haven't. I've done a lot of other stupid stuff, and we can talk about that any other time. But I tell you that story to tell you this. When you hang out with stupid people, hopefully not that stupid, and hope you don't do that stupid of things, but you will do what? Stupid things. The people that you relate to, the people that you have a relationship with, the people that you spend the bulk of your time with will influence you whether you realize it or not. You will start listening to their music, you'll start going to their places, and you will start doing their things, and you could find yourself very easily running away from God and not even realizing that you're doing it. What this verse is saying, and what Solomon, like we talked about a few months ago in our series Basic Instructions, is the idea of this, is that when you surround yourself with people who are like-minded and who are Christians and who love Jesus, their influence will help influence you and vice versa. It's the reason why Christian friendship is so important. Now remember, this series that we're talking about, Back to the Basics, is the foundation of Christian living. What it means to be a Christian. A lot of us in here may not even know what that is, and we just go to church on Sundays, and we come to youth group on Wednesday nights or play games or whatever, and we think that that's being a Christian. That is not being a Christian. Being a Christian is going out into the world and showing them the love of Christ through your actions. If you are not acting like Christ, then you are not being a good Christian. I'm going to flat out say it. If you are not speaking like Christ, you are not being a good Christian. If you are not influencing others for Christ, you are not being a good Christian. And I'm speaking to myself as well. The basic fundamentals of Christianity is what we're talking about. Last week, the most basic and number one is my relationship with God. Number two, the most basic and fundamental thing is my relationship with other people. That is basic. 1 + 1 = 2. It's the basics of Christianity. If you don't get this, You need to understand it. It needs to be who you are in the fabric of your DNA. My relationship with God is number one. I hang out with Him. I talk with Him. I listen to Him. I do what He asks me to do. Number two is this. I surround myself with Christian people so that they can influence me and I can influence others with the love and grace and mercy of Jesus Christ. If you are not doing that, you are missing what it means to be a Christian, and your entire existence is floundering because it's what you were created for. And if you're not doing what you were created for, you're going to hate life. And you're going to run to all these other things, and it's going to ruin you. Because you're going to try to find your worth in sports. You're going to try to find your worth in academics. You're going to try to find your worth in relationships. You're going to try to find your worth in everything else but God. Let's check out what the book of Ecclesiastes says. And if one person is vulnerable to attack, two can drive the attacker away. As the saying goes, a rope made of 3 strands is not quickly broken. You see, life will come at you. Life will attack you. This world will not be fair. And when it's not fair, you need those people around you who are Christians to help you. Or maybe sometimes that other person is you helping other people. And he says it kind of like this. He used an analogy. Like, can you imagine playing tug-of-war with a thread? It's not going to work, right? What do you play tug-of-war with? A big, giant, thick rope. Why? Because it's not going to break. And the reason it's not going to break is why? Because it's woven with millions and millions of little, tiny pieces of thread, right? Essentially. Now, it could be a different substance, but essentially small, tiny little pieces of thread. And that's what he's saying. He's saying, when you have something that is vulnerable and weak, like you when you're by yourself, and you bring alongside 1 or 2 or 3 other people, all of a sudden now, when you're weaving your relationship with each other, you become what? A strong rope. And the things of this world, the crap that life will throw at you, doesn't seem quite as difficult to maintain or manage. Because you have these other people, these relationships that are building you up and helping you understand your relationship between you and God and you and other people. By yourself, you can't do this. Coming to church once a month or coming to church only on Sundays is not going to get you deeper with Jesus. In fact, coming to church every single week is not going to get you deeper with Jesus. Going to youth camp, playing games, reading your Bible once a day is not going to get you deeper with Jesus. What is going to get you deeper in Jesus is by submitting everything you are, by running to Him, God, and asking Him to change you from the inside out. Services won't do it. My preaching will not do it. I can make you feel good. I can make you understand God a little better. I can hopefully give you insight into who you are as an individual, but I cannot make you get into a deeper relationship with God. And that's what He so desires for you. And He surrounds you with people to have relationship with, to be accountable to talk to on a daily basis as you talk to God on a daily basis, to build you up and help you understand why you are the way you are and why do you run away from God like every other human being on the planet.